Next thing is, Sal, we will throw to you for this one. So international eligibility is in the spotlight. So the Hammer and Payne Haas are reportedly the latest weighing up a switch to Samoa. How do you feel if the game has got it rid the current rules in terms of international eligibility?
As a coach of Fetu Samoa, we're facing this at the moment. We gained eligibility to play Australia and New Zealand later on this year. And some conversations around the girls when we won the last game was, now, does that mean that we're in Tier 1 and we won't get a chance to play State of Origin? I think there's some misconceptions around the rules and what people understand. You have to have a strong domestic competition to be classed in Tier 1. So England have got that. New Zealand have got that because they're part of the NRL landscape. The other Tier 1, there won't be any more Tier 1s. The Tonga, Fiji, Samoa will never, ever be in Tier 1 because they're not part of the domestic competition and they don't have their own team. Or their own competition. So for me right now, I think it's fine the way it is. If you're a Tongan heritage, Samoan heritage, you should be able to play for New South Wales or Queensland. To everyone else saying, well, if you open it up and England and New Zealand, stuff like that, is it going to be such a bad thing? I'm not sure. It's going to be up to the powers that be, but I think we've got it right now with New Zealand and England. Obviously, we've seen guys change their allegiance to play for that country. And rightly so if they believe in that. But I think we've got it right now. We're just overcomplicating it. Are we upset that there's more Samoans, looking to play State of Origin? There's other front rowers out there that maybe Melbourne can pick from. Maybe, you'd have to have that depth, but we shouldn't punish Samoa for, wanting Payne Haas and Hamasai Tapuai-Fidow to be going back and play for their country of heritage. To be honest, it's awful. To think that you're going to have to play for Australia or Samoa, maybe dad's Australian, mum's Samoan. I think that's horrible to be able to put players through, but we've got to respect their choice if they do make that choice.
The tier thing, T-I-E-R, actually brings tears, T-E-A-R, to my eyes, because I don't think your average fan and your average consumer of the game truly understands it, and I don't know if that message will ever get out there. And I do struggle, and Sowie's right, it's about the youth development that goes on in these nations, and the reality is there's probably only a few countries in the world that have youth development programs, and they are the Tier 1 nations and a couple of others. But I personally have difficulty in somebody who was born and raised in New South Wales or Queensland not being allowed to play for New South Wales or Queensland, regardless of which nation they choose to play. And I think that represents our modern society. We're a lot more mobile. People move around now. I know I'm a fruit salad when you look at my family history, and I'm sure the plenty of us are. So I personally believe Victor Radley, for example, should have never been stopped from playing for New South Wales, even though we decided to play for England. I think this concept that it's a trial for Australia, I think that's outdated. There's 26 rounds of the NRL where they can have a look at the best players for Australia. Also, because of the injury rates and because you get suspended now for doing anything close to the head, the chances of you picking your Australian side after Origin 3 and that being the same side after the grand final are very minimal. So I think this concept of it's an Australian trial, let's scrap that. If somebody's born and raised in one of the states, regardless of which country they decide, let them play Origin. Now, Sowie, can I ask you, though, do you get upset with players changing country? So,
No.
Personally, I'd rather them pick a country and then stick with it.
No, because you contradict yourself with your point, because what you're saying is now that a family that is combined, whether they're Australian, Samoan, Tongan Australian, New Zealand Australian, doesn't get a chance to represent both parts of his family and the heritage on both sides of his family.
See, I don't think I am contradicting my point, because you could have one parent born in New South Wales and one parent born in Queensland. And you could have been born on the border and moved over to play under 13.
Yeah, but you're saying wherever you're born in, if you're born in New South Wales, not where the parent is. We're talking about you can't compare apples and oranges. International football is different. The heritage for both sides can be different. So you should have eligibility to represent both sides of the family. Otherwise, you're going to get to a point where you're going to represent mum's side and dad's like, I've always wanted to see you play for Samoa. And we've had that this year. Origin's different. Your point about the Australian side being a selection over 26 rounds is exactly right. But when we're talking about Origin, we're talking about born in New South Wales or Queensland. We're not talking about born in another country. That's the...
Well, there are players who are born in other countries who play for Origin teams now if they get into Australia
they were born and
before
raised
the age
in New
of
South
13.
Wales. Born and raised in New South Wales or Queensland. That was your point.
Born, I said.
Yeah. Born. So if they're born in New South Wales, then they should be able to play for New South Wales and then pick their own eligibility. If they play for Australia, if they play for Australia, you should be able to play for New Zealand if that's your family heritage.
Yeah, I just don't think it looks good for the international game. I don't know many sports that chop and change countries as much as we do. I don't think that looks good on the international stage.
What is our international stage? It's been 3 teams for 50 years.
And now it's never going to be anything else.
Do you want to know I reckon we're a bit scared of the Polynesian countries coming up and beating the top countries.
I wouldn't disagree.
And that's a coach. As a coach of Samoa, I reckon that the bigger countries are scared of Tonga and playing Samoa in a World Cup final.
But one of the things that has impacted the Australian Kangaroo side for the last 2 decades is players such as Kieran Foran and Benji Marshall and the like getting over here to have an Australian schooling and an Australian development and then deciding to play for New Zealand and beating them in World Cup finals or a Four Nations final. Or if you actually look at the finals of the last 2 decades, it's pretty much 50-50. Whereas the previous 2 decades before that, we had dominant Australian sides. So I do agree with you, Sowie. We are having that pressure put on Australia, which I personally applaud because I wasn't born and raised in this country that I live in. But I think that if Australia really want to strengthen their brand again, they really need to make Origin as big a competition as possible from as many angles as possible. So players that do decide to play for other countries, they play. That makes it harder to play representative football because the best players are around. And also, I personally feel that you should pick one country and stay there personally. And I think we could talk about the whole day, but I think if somebody's pulled on the green and gold, they should stay there.